It's 2 a.m., you're almost asleep, and then out of nowhere, a memory, something you said at a party in 2016, a text you sent, a joke that landed wrong, and your whole body reacts. You physically flinch. Maybe you whisper, "Oh no," into the dark. It was 10 years ago. Nobody else remembers it. It didn't matter then, and it definitely doesn't matter now. So why does it still feel like it happened 5 minutes ago? Here's the thing, most people never realize the person in that memory isn't you anymore. And once you understand that, the 2 a.m. cringe starts to lose its grip. First, why 2 a.m.? Why not at lunch? Because during the day, your mind is busy. Tasks, screens, conversations, all of it keeps your attention pointed outward. Then you lie down, the lights go off, the input stops, and your brain, with nothing left to do, turns inward and starts wandering through old files. It doesn't pick randomly, though. It gravitates toward the memories with the strongest emotional charge, and because those are the ones it's stored most vividly. And embarrassment is one of the strongest charges there is. So the cringe isn't appearing at 2 a.m. because it's important. It's appearing because it's loud. And at 2 a.m., there's nothing else to drown it out. Now here's what's actually happening. When you cringe, you're running a trial. The memory plays back and you judge the person in it. Why did I say that? Why was I so awkward? What was wrong with me? But look at who's judging. The judge is you today, with 10 more years of experience. You've learnt what lands and what doesn't. You've figured out how to read a room. You've collected a decade of social data. And the defendant? A version of you who had none of that yet. You're putting a 16-year-old on trial using the standards of a 26-year-old. That's not a fair trial. That's a rigged one. Of course they look clumsy. They were working with a fraction of what you know now. The cringe feels like evidence that you were bad. It's actually evidence that you've learned. And here's the part that makes it stranger. You're not just judging a past version of yourself. You're judging someone who, in a lot of real ways, doesn't exist anymore. Think about how much actually changes in 10 years. Your values shift. What you thought mattered at 16 barely registers now. Your social skills develop. Your sense of humor matures. What embarrasses you changes. What you want changes. Even your brain keeps developing well into your 20s. The part responsible for judgment and impulse control wasn't finished when that memory was made. So the person who said that awkward thing at the party, they were operating with a different value system, less experience, and a brain that was literally still under construction. You share a name with them. You share memories with them, but you are not them. And here's the part nobody says out loud. You wouldn't judge a stranger that harshly for a slightly awkward moment 10 years ago. You'd think, they were young. You just don't extend that same mercy to your past self because it feels like you. Here's a weird detail. A lot of those memories didn't even feel that bad when they happened. Maybe you shrugged it off at the time. Maybe you didn't notice at all. So why does it hurt more now? Because back then, you didn't have the awareness to see it as cringe. You didn't know what you didn't know. Now you do. You've grown enough to recognize the awkwardness. And that recognition is what creates the sting. In other words, you can only cringe at what you've outgrown. If that moment still felt normal to you, you wouldn't flinch at it. The flinch is the gap between who you were and who you are, and that gap is growth, measured in embarrassment. So every time you wince at old you, it's actually a receipt for how far you've come. But there's an irony worth being honest about. The memories that haunt you most are almost never the ones anyone else kept. That party in 2016, everyone else forgot within days. They were busy worrying about their own awkward moment. This is the spotlight effect. We massively overestimate how much others notice and remember about us. So you're holding a rigged trial for a crime nobody witnessed against a person who no longer exists. And you're doing it at 2 a.m. when you're tired, alone, and least able to defend yourself. It's the most one-sided courtroom imaginable. The only person still holding that memory against you is you. So what do you do at 2 a.m. when it hits? 1. Name the trick. When the memory plays, say it to yourself. That's the old me. They didn't have what I have now. You're reminding the judge the defendant is a different person. 2. Give them what you'd give a friend. Imagine a friend told you that exact story. You'd say, honestly, that's not that bad. Say it to yourself, out loud if you have to. 3. Find the lesson, then dismiss the case. Ask, what did that moment teach me? If the lesson is already learnt, and it almost always is, then the memory has done its job. You can let it rest. 4. Don't fight the replay. The harder you push a memory away, the harder it bounces back. Instead, let it play, name it, and let it pass, like a car going by on the street. You're not erasing the memory, you're just refusing to keep retrying a case that's already closed. Here's the reframe that matters most. People without cringe memories aren't more confident. They're usually just less self-aware. Or they haven't grown enough to see their old self clearly. The fact that you can look back and wince means you've developed judgment, empathy, and perspective you didn't have before. Cringe is what growth feels like from the inside. And 10 years from now, you'll probably cringe at something you're doing today. Not because today you are bad, because future you will have grown. That's not something to dread, that's the whole point. So the next time a memory from 10 years ago ambushes you at 2 a.m., remember what's actually happening: a rigged trial, a defendant who no longer exists, a crime nobody else witnessed, and a judge who's tired and alone. You're not that person anymore. You're the person who grew enough to notice. So name it, show them some mercy, take the lesson, and close the case. Save this for the next time it hits. And tell me, how old is the memory that still gets you?